Mystery pictures made by unique technologies, art that developed despite all the bans. How one man succeeded to establish such a great legacy that could hardly be created by a dozen artists. Today, the Master of Crafts programme presents a story of a unique artist of the 20th century. The 20th century is not only the epoch of the development of technologies, but also a period of the introduction of new art movements. During the century, so many new movements and genres were introduced that the Renaissance era seemed monotonous. Painting was the first art form that was subjected to changes. Among new art trends, there are modernism, futurism, cubism, super-realism and expressionism, and this is only a tiny part of the new trends. Painters who used a particular style as a rule, perfected their skills in this art movement over their entire life. Very few Ukrainian artists could work in two trends at the same time, and only several painters applied three or more such trends. In the middle of the 20th century, a painter who had been unrecognized for most of his life was born in Ukraine. But today, this man is known as one of the most multi-sided and skillful masters of this epoch. In this workshop, you can see such a variety of pictures that it can seem to you they were painted by many painters. As if one of them paints unique landscapes, the second is an abstractionist, and the third one is a practitioner of photo-realism. But all the pictures are painted by one artist. This is the people's artist of Ukraine, Ivan Marchuk. When I lived in America, I understood that Americans disliked diversity, because if a painter is involved in one style and everyone likes it, they will not approve his other engagements. They recruit this artist and conclude a contract with him. This person is to produce goods by order of the gallery. But nobody succeeded to recruit Ivan Marchuk, neither the Soviet authorities nor owners of modern art galleries. The master doesn't stop his creative search, even if he achieves success in one of the trends. According to his calculation, he uses 12 different styles and never follows the tastes of a changeable audience or conjuncture. His story is about freedom of artistic creativity, searching for expression in one's life. Coming up next in the programme, how Ivan Marchuk invented an original technique of painting and why he was considered crazy because of this. Ivan Marchuk was born in Ternopil in 1936, several years before the USSR occupied western Ukrainian lands. After the Second World War in the early 1950s, he entered the College of Applied Arts in Lviv. As the artist says, the teachers taught him to be more of a decorator than a painter. University pedagogues tried to break all my stereotypes, but I felt that I was an individual. I couldn't be liked by everyone. I didn't want to do that. If I hadn't found myself, I wouldn't have become an artist. Do you understand? At the same time, artists could only use one style, socialist realism, and any attempt to go beyond it was considered by the Soviet authorities as an attempt that posed a threat to the Soviet regime. It happened in 1962. After Nikita Khrushchev brawled artists and abstractionists who showcased their pictures at an exhibition held in Moscow. As a rule, they wrote great novels and painted pictures on achievements of a state that poses as Soviet people. In search of his individuality, Ivan Marchuk found himself in the painting of natural images of late autumn. I saw how naked trees against the sky looked like. Every tree is naked. This anatomy and rhythms is fantastic. I thought that I could not follow the standards introduced for other painters, but I was impressed with graphics. I thought for long and finally invented this novel technique. He called this technique lentonism. Such pictures consist of lots of small strokes that together make a combined image. The paint is applied on the picture with thin lines. They intersect at different angles and create volume and light effects. Nobody used this analogous technique before. The lentonism style requires a lot of hours of hard work and also courage in totalitarian times. In the early 1960s, Ivan Marchuk worked as an illustrator at the Kiev Institute of Super Hard Materials. The painter dedicated his entire leisure time to his new hobby, and soon he understood that he had shifted away from socialist realism forever once he decided to show the drawings to one of his colleagues. I threw my pictures down on the floor, and she saw them. She was very stricken. She even came out onto the balcony to have a rest. When she came, I showed her other pictures, and she reacted in the same way. She came to Lviv to see her friends and colleagues and said to them, "Do you know Ivan chose the wrong way? He is crazy." The series of paintings titled Voice of My Soul, consisting of surrealist portraits, the so-called picture proverbs, made such an impression on Ivan Marchuk. The painter confirms that each of them contains lots of subtext, an untold story and an undisclosed secret. It is difficult to say what it means. What is the subtext of a picture? Eternity sings its songs. People have to get into the spirit of the picture's content. So an artist should pay considerable attention to people's feelings. They have to want to solve a riddle. It is not typical for socialist realism style. So the one who didn't meet the standards of the style quickly fell out of order. Coming up next in the program, how Ivan Marchuk was in creative isolation and at what age he succeeded to hold his first personal exhibition. Citizens of the USSR had no right to climb up the career ladder without joining the Communist Party. An artist also could not claim official recognition without joining the Union of Artists of the USSR. In the opinion of Soviet bureaucrats, even usual landscape paintings made through applying the technique of Ivan Marchuk seemed a Ukrainian nationalist threat to the Soviet power. I wasn't admitted to the Union because my paintings did not meet the established standards. I came from Lviv. I was perceived as a Ukrainian nationalist. Who comes from Lviv? Nationalists. They thought I was going to do something suspicious. They supposed I coded a message against the Soviet regime in those pictures. He started to create his unique pictures only in 1965, when he was almost 30 years old. Year after year, his artist friends were awarded state prizes, but Ivan Marchuk couldn't even show his pictures to passers-by in the street. It was one thing to paint pictures, knowing that the pieces of work will see the light, but it is another thing altogether to spend over 15 years in creative isolation, hopelessly waiting for the chance to present your works to the public. The authorities remembered my name when they wanted to instill fear into somebody. They asked, "Is Marchuk your friend? Be careful, otherwise you'll have problems." I lived in such an atmosphere for 17 years, but I just continued painting my pictures. I simply differed from other people, and my way of living differed from theirs. I disturbed nobody. I simply did my part. Isolation not only broke the master's morale, but it also made him focus on creative work. Ivan Marchuk could paint pictures all week long for 20 hours a day, but it didn't mean that he had no notion of time. This is also a picture from the Voice of My Soul cycle. It is called The Flowing of Time. Everything is clear and integral. The time is flowing. A man is sad. He looks how the candle is burning down. This is a so-called life motivation, and nobody will succeed in avoiding it. Only at the age of 44, Ivan Marchuk finally got the chance to arrange his personal exhibition. But it was held neither in Kiev nor in Lviv, but rather in Moscow. The persecution of Soviet painters was the main reason to hold an exhibition. In September 1974, an exhibition of banned avant-gardists and non-conformists was opened in the outskirts of Moscow, right in the middle of a wasteland. In a short time, the Soviet authorities sent about 100 militiamen, irrigating machines and bulldozers there. Visitors of the exhibition and artists were arrested. The authorities failed to take into consideration the fact that foreign journalists were present at the exhibition. It resulted in a huge scandal in the world press, so the repressive machine eased its pressure. Several days later, one of the fans of Ivan Marchuk decided to help the Ukrainian artist organize an exhibition of his pictures. She said to me, "Vanya, I will organize an exhibition for you in Moscow." I said, "What's up with you? An exhibition for me? For an artist whose works have been banned for nearly 15 years? She answered, "I've succeeded in doing more impossible things." I gave her 100 works and they caused a furore in Moscow. Coming up next in the program, how the painter broke free and why he couldn't work abroad. Having gained recognition of the public for the first time in 1979, Ivan Marchuk felt a creative surge and created a new series of pictures titled Shevchenkiana. But his works were not recognized for many years until Perestroika. All the more, the master ventured to show Shevchenko's poetry in illustrated form. But the illustrations, like I had made, nobody had done before. I painted pictures. The people who saw them recognized familiar episodes of the works of the Ukrainian poet. I had to paint about 100 pictures, but I made only 42 because the Union of Artists hindered me. Officials came here and destroyed everything. They criticized me and discouraged me from painting illustrations. In the 1980s, the painters succeeded to arrange several exhibitions. One of them was held at a hospital. Right after the Berlin Wall fell, Ivan Marchuk applied for a trip to Australia. From there, he moved to the US and saw a world that completely differed from the Soviet one. In the US, he finally got the opportunity to show his pictures. The master was able to display his works at the galleries. His New York period became the so-called missing youth for Ivan Marchuk. This is the period when artists got new impressions and inspiration to create pictures. Over 11 years, he visited thousands of exhibitions by other painters. In his leisure time, he painted pictures and invented new painting techniques. Ivan Marchuk decided to return to Ukraine right after the terrorist acts on the US on September the 11th, 2001. Ivan Marchuk confesses that he decided to come back to Ukraine not only because of the sense of danger, but also because he longed for his home. In Ukraine, he created a series of pictures titled Dreams Overflow the Banks. These are abstract, expressionistic works executed using the Platonism technique. I experiment with different styles. Very often I use old techniques because I can make thousands, hundreds of thousands of pictures, but nobody will see in them any repetition of strokes or lines. Even 50 years after painting his first pictures, Ivan Marchuk continues experimenting. In 2007, one of the most respected British newspapers included him in the list of top 100 geniuses of modernity. Unfortunately, for various reasons, a museum dedicated to the artist's works has not been opened in Ukraine. His pictures are still exhibited at separate exhibitions all over the world. In Amsterdam, there is the great Vincent van Gogh, while in Kiev and Lviv, there is unusually diverse Ivan Marchuk. The cycle of pictures, titled Voice of My Soul, is the so-called core of my creative work. Other cycles are the so-called branches of the core. When I departed from Soviet standards, I didn't want to cater to someone's demands. I am a man of pride, otherwise I wouldn't have created pictures in so many various styles.